for matches as well. Sanguine management is really important, and both of these teams have incredibly strong and history tanks. Anuo revered as one of the best tanks in China. Remember, there's a ton of players in China, so that's nothing to joke about. And then, of course, we saw if we do get to a game 3, what can happen in that Halls of Atonement. There are big pulls there.
There really are, and we've already been able to see a little bit of differences in terms of strategies. But first, let's see what Theater of Pain has in store for us as Aster.Y and Obey Alliance are ready to go here in game number 1.
All right, this is going to be the first look at what these teams have in store for us. They're both on the same comp here. It is that physical damage enhancing comp, and they're both going into the first boss with all of their cooldowns. The Ashen Hallows coming down. Neither team pulling the trash into the boss either. They are just going with the boss and the one. Actually, it's just Aster that's got the one Bloodhorn. I don't see that on the side of Obey Alliance. So slightly bigger pull for Aster here.
Yeah, Aster with that Bloodhorn in that pack, you have to be very scared about how bolstering can interact with the trash pack. So Aster's doing a really good job of focusing down the boss, getting that Bloodhorn and just cleaving it, and then they will be able to just focus down that Bloodhorn with pretty ease while the RP is happening for them to be sent down. And Aster.Y, with the additional trash count, is able to get that first boss dealt with faster than Obey Alliance. They did a great job of keeping all 3 of those bosses just stacked up the whole entire time. And, I mean, 4 targets is definitely better priority damage on the bosses as well for a comp like Aster.Y's. So they were doing a really good job there with their innovation for how they were pulling that.
Yeah, let's see what they are deciding to do now that they get to the bottom here. It's going to be Varuth being pulled with them towards the Cult the Rock Wing. And they're going to actually bring this on an adventure, into these shackled souls as well. This should be pretty cool here. Meanwhile, Obey Alliance heading downstairs also. Skylark's just going to heroic leap, and also on the exact same plan here, it's going to be Varuth joining this pull. But yeah, Aster, something like 20 seconds of lead generated kind of out of nowhere. I'm not sure how they got this extra time, especially since they pulled extra trash.
Well, they actually ended up pulling both the same Bloodhorn. It just comes down to keeping those mobs stacked up and the ability to be able to get kicks and keep the mobs grouped up on the first boss, and that's saved Aster a lot of time. And now Shroud has been popped here. So since it is bolstering, a lot of teams have been electing to pull a bunch of Shackled Souls into the Portal Guardians, but I wonder how that's going to be different with this set of fixes. And it looks like Aster.Y is just going to do a delayed pull of the Shackled Souls into the Portal Guardians, as opposed to a pull where the Shackled Souls are like the first thing and you're kind of cleaving them down before you get the Portal Guardian pulled in.
Yeah, there are a couple different options for how to deal with this. The other one is to just kill the Portal Guardian and then get the Shackled Souls into the end of the Incinerator instead. But yeah, the way Aster have done it is looking so fast. Obey Alliance also trying to make the exact same pull work here. Aster cheating ahead here. Great movement so that they don't have as far to travel before getting onto this platform. And they're going to head right instead of left and get the little bit less count, but a little bit of a faster and less total health to deal with on this side. You'll sometimes see teams choosing to go left. We've seen it a couple times in MDI, but not what Aster are interested in here. They are just going to take the easier side here.
So look at this. So they only have one magic dispel from that hunter, and they were able to get one of those Bone Mage's shields off immediately, but then that second Bone Mage just took such a long time to be able to deal with. And where you look at Obey Alliance here, they only have the Soulbinder and the triple Shackled Souls, so while this can be a bolstering problem, you just focus down the Soulbinder with that Rogue, and it shouldn't be too big of an issue as a whole. So I feel like that pull from Aster.Y was a little bit slower, but I wonder where they're going to make up a count differential later on these platforms.
Yeah, that's the thing. Obey Alliance not only are going to finish this pull faster and claw back some time, they've also got 2 extra count, which ends up being about 1% worth of count of benefit out of that. So we'll see if that ends up being relevant. That's the kind of number where maybe it matters, maybe it doesn't, maybe you end up going over by that much anyways, as both teams now getting started with the trash pull. Actually, Obey Alliance getting started while Aster.Y already have finished off the Guardian and are now just working on some of the side trash here.
Where did they get these Shackled Souls from?
That is a mystery, yeah.
Where are these from?
Those might be the ones that Obey Alliance just did from their first platform. Maybe Aster have found a way to tag those mobs and get them to snap down?
Maybe that would be insane. I wish I could rewind and figure out where those mobs came from. Anyways, Aster now proving why Tratnos and I are commentating instead of competing.
Wait, no, aren't they just shackled? Obey Alliance have got them as well. So whatever it is,
oh, okay, so they're just on
they're
that side.
either just there on that side and we're losing it, or both teams figured out how to get them.
All right,
I
we're
think
probably just
they might
losing
just
it
be
then.
there and we might just be losing it, but. A definitive answer will have to be found later as Obey Alliance are getting started with this pull that Aster.Y already have the Bone Reaver almost dead in. Really important to prioritize that damage as Anuo taking a lot of damage. They are going to be able to survive. They need to kick that Bone Spear, and it's not going to get kicked. They've got a player down now.
Yeah, it's just a slight bolstering mismanagement. Ooh, are they burning a battle res on this?
Yeah.
Look at that. They end up just committing a battle res. They're so confident in their own play. They realize that they don't even want to waste the time to be able to just manually res that. They'll commit the battle res and they'll figure it out later. And Obey Alliance, hey, this is how they're getting back into the game.
Yeah, I mean, that is... The battle res uses less time, right? But it is that very important resource. They don't have any battle res now for the next few minutes, so you've got to be very confident. You've got to subscribe to that philosophy of Yodo. It's a sister philosophy to the YOLO philosophy, and it means you only die once. And as long as that's true, then using a battle res isn't a bad thing.
I need to subscribe to this philosophy because I'm not doing it right.
It would be an improvement for you in most of the dungeons I've seen, yes.
Of course. All right, so now Aster.Y on to Kultharok here. They do have that Ashen Hollow available to them. We see a lot of teams, they pull these Shackled Souls off from the side into this boss. However, with it being bolstering, if any Shackled Souls are going to be pulled, it's going to be whenever the boss is at like that 20% threshold. So it's going to be very late into this boss as opposed to super early here. And now Obey Alliance hot on Aster.Y's tail. They don't have their Ashen Hollow available for them though. So that's going to be something that is going to make Kultharok just last a little bit longer.
Yeah, Ashen Hollow is going to be up in 1 minute and 45, and that's a pretty awkward amount of time because that's right around when the boss is going to be dead anyways. A little bit, in fact, the boss will probably die before the Ashen Hollow becomes available. But the good news is they will have the Ashen Hollow for a trash pull after the boss, whereas Aster.Y are going to have to deal with whatever is next without much in the tank. So that may be a way that Obey Alliance can turn this disadvantage into an advantage. It's going to be very important, though, because as you can see, I mean, this single target that Ashen Hollow has brought here for Aster.Y is just so much. Ashen Hollow is so good on single target.
Yeah, and now with the 3 Shackled Souls that they have on this is going to increase their single target to the boss even more, and Kultharok's health is just plummeting. Ooh, 1 bolstering stack onto Kultharok right at the very end, but Aster.Y has almost a perfect bolster kill, really knowing that threshold that they need to be able to pull those Shackled Souls into the boss super well. And now let's see if Obey Alliance does something similar, or if they're going to be okay with their 43% enemy forces count, because Aster.Y is leaving this Kultharok wing at 45%.
Yeah, just a beautiful display of how you can still pull trash onto bosses with bolstering. It just needs to be very precise. Aster.Y getting this pull started. Beautiful Spear of Bastion. Look at how much value that thing is getting. Like 10 different mobs gripped back into its area of effect as Aster.Y just getting to deploy now so much damage onto this pull. Fantastic work. No Ashen Hollow, no problem, they say, as they get almost all of this trash taken care of. Obey Alliance, meanwhile, they're going to be trying to make this happen with the Ashen Hollow, maybe with that Butcher being added as well. Maybe that's something that can be possible due to the Ashen Hollow. And okay, the trap is going to come out on the Butcher, and they are going to... Oh, they're actually going to multi-shot, though.
Oh!
Okay, so yeah, they did want the Butcher, and they're going to have to prio damage it a little bit. It does have a little bit more health there. The trap was just to freeze it in place for a couple seconds so that they could get everything started here. And Obey Alliance now trying to make this all work out, gaining even a little bit more count if it does.
And Aster.Y here, doing an insanely large pull inside of this Gourd Chop wing. Is that 2 gas bags? This is a very dangerous pull here. Okay, so no, it's just the 1 gas bag that they have on this pack. This is a pull that a lot of teams would elect to skip under normal circumstances because they don't want to be dealing with this much trash here and this much bolstering. So they had that gas bag, they had that Butcher, and they had that Diseased Horror here, and the Backle coming out, and now this Diseased Horror and the Butcher, both at high HP. That Devour Flesh needs to be stopped. Really good job from Aster.Y stopping that, and now the Diseased Horror meleeing Anuo, and hey, Aster.Y makes that pull look super easy on their side.
Yeah, now they're going to be taking these two butchers into the boss fight. It's going to start with a binding shot. That binding shot is going to keep them back at the edge of the room for a while because they actually want to avoid damaging the butchers too much. Even just the incidental damage from their single target would be too much on those targets and would cause bolstering stacks to be applied to Gorechop because they're getting pulled at the start of this fight. So you can see that they actually intentionally missed those butchers with the Spear of Bastion. They are just trying to deal boss damage here, and even less than 100% of their incidental cleave will be enough to kill those butchers right at the end of this boss fight.
40 goes down for the side of Obey Alliance, but Obey Alliance is able to get their pull dealt with, and hey, they're a little bit ahead in terms of enemy forces count. They used a blind and a freezing trap on this pack, where we saw Aster.Y just ended up burning that binding shot, and this Disease Horror and this Butcher, like you were talking about, are starting to get pretty low on the side of Aster.Y, while they have 40% of Gorechop's HP that they need to chew through before those mobs die.
It's really the Butcher that's the scariest one here. The Horror actually casts a shield on itself that you can just let that channel for a couple ticks, and that will prevent you from having bolstering if you're worried about it. But the Butcher doesn't have anything of the... Actually, I guess it has Devour Flesh, big heal on itself, so maybe you could just let the mobs heal themselves. Aster.Y are pretty confident, though, and they are interrupting both of those effects, and they are just going to be DPSing everything down. Clinical precision here. Everything is dying at the exact same time. Gorechop followed by the next two trash mobs. Beautiful. I mean, that is the kind of thing. That is the hours of practice that they've put into this dungeon. They know the exact health points that everything works at and just how much damage they are assigning to each of those targets. It is not a mistake. It is fully intentional.
And that's some serious selfless play coming out of the Windwalker Monk. He had to hold back his desire to AoE everything because he knew that the Sub-Rogue was going to gain just slightly more damage than he was. So he knew that mashing Spinning Crane Kick over and over again, no matter how much you wanted to do it, would yield net losses as a whole.
Aster.Y now solidly in the lead here. They are making their way towards the Zav wing, and you can see the boss splits. Aster gaining about 20 seconds on each boss. They are going to gain even more, though, on the Gorechop split. They did lose a little bit of count on a couple of those splits, but not very much, right? We're talking about fractions of a percent or a couple percent at most. So if they can get that without it costing them a minute, that is how much of a lead they have right now. They have that 1 minute of lead to their name right now, which is very impressive given that the two runs, there's no death difference between the two, right? That is a huge amount of time to gain just through clean play, good execution, and good pathing.
Yeah, so this Zav wing is done very different from a lot of different teams, and especially with this dungeon being on bolstering, I think it's going to be one of those things that most teams are going to have a different answer for what's going on. So you do see the Windwalker there. He's grabbing the Necrolord banner first and foremost, and now we're going to see how these teams deal with this champion. Okay, so Freezing Trap was applied to this champion. That's patrolling down in the middle, and so they do have this commander here that they have to be able to focus DPS on. These Arbalists and these Conscripts in this pack are really scary just to the group as a whole, but what's even scarier is bolstering. So focusing down this mini-boss is your top priority, and if you do bolster it up, that can cost you a lot of time. So
Onwa! Oh! Player down here for Aster.Y. The release... Yeah, the release is going to come out as well, and they have another player down as well there. The Windwalker is also on the floor here. They are going to release and just try and run back and recover this, but this might close much of that 1 minute of advantage they've gained.
Yeah, and it's like we were just talking about, just the amount of damage that this does to your whole entire team, especially if you have potential problems with stuff like quaking on a really tight corner there, it can cause issues. Aster.Y is able to recover that, but hey, look at where Obey Alliance is. They're trying to get their double champions dealt with, and they bolster up that one champion at 30% HP here. And that's not looking great for Obey Alliance with just how much HP they're going to have to chew through. But now they're grabbing the Conscripts and the Arbalists into the remaining 20% of this.
Yeah, this is actually intentional. The idea is the other one is the one that casts the Whirlwind and that makes it so you can't really pull trash efficiently onto it.
Sure.
And so you just kill that one first. Yeah, you bolster the other one, but then the healths are roughly equal with all the mobs in this pack. And so it works out pretty nicely here for Obey Alliance. They are still behind, certainly, but looking at the count now, they're at equal count with Aster.Y, and they are going to pull this thing to the side. I think this is going to be a sneak through game plan. They're going to take the captain with them, CC it near the top of the stairs, and go into the boss without being in combat with that mini-boss. That mini-boss is getting vanished off instead.
All right, so now looking at the left side here, we have Aster.Y already engaging Zav the Fallen with a banner up. Ooh, Anuo just saying, I will stand in this stop, quaking his teammate. It's fine. It's just a minor flesh wound.
Yeah. You start explaining mechanics to prop warriors, right? And they're like, oh, okay, so you're like, okay, yeah, so the boss does this circle, and the prop warrior's like, wait, hang on a second, what kind of damage is it? And then you say the word physical, and they just check out. They're not listening to anything else about how the mechanic works. They just know, all right, I'm going to put my shield up, and this is not going to affect me. I don't have to worry about this at all.
All right, so here on a 20, I'm interested to see if Aster.Y is going to be able to get Zav killed off before the second. Oh gosh, I knew.
Doesn't matter,
very
physical
scary.
damage.
Yeah, it's still fine. They need to be able to skip the second downstairs phase for Aster.Y, and it looks like they're dropping that Spear of Bastion, and they're committing a couple of offensive CDs to be able to miss that phase, and now they just have this champion to deal with. They send their Windwalker Monk on a mission. Low single target damage Windwalker Monk does, so they're sending him up to that Mordretha area to start the RP. On the right side of your screen, you see Obey Alliance here at 20% on Zav, and this is starting to get incredibly close. There is a 2-death advantage for Obey Alliance, but they are not somewhere in the range of 10 seconds back. However, if they do bring an insane amount of single target damage on Mordretha, they could be able to claw this back.
Yeah, we can see it is about 15 seconds now in favor of Aster.Y, just with the boss differential and the death differential factored in. That's not factoring in, though, the fact that the count is slightly different. So maybe we will see a possibility of acceleration for Obey Alliance here. I don't think that's actually going to come to pass, though. I think both teams are going to be on the same plan from here, so I don't think that's going to matter. As you can see, Obey Alliance sneaking out here. They ended up skipping those ossified conscripts at the start of this wing, so may have been part of the story of how they saved time in this wing. I really think, though, it was just the deaths on the side of Aster.Y that slowed down this split. Obey Alliance heading upstairs now. They're going to be able to pull this boss, but Aster.Y already getting it near 50%. It's going to be so hard to make up this time.
Yeah, just for some stats, Echo, whenever they were in Theater of Pain earlier, had a 1659 with 0 deaths inside of this Theater of Pain. Aster.Y and Obey Alliance both look like if they have perfect runs, they could potentially even be on pace with that. But Ashen Hollow and Bloodlust have been ripped for Aster.Y. Mordretha hitting that 50% threshold as these contenders start sprinting in. You have that Ritualist as well that you need to make sure that you're continuously getting kicks on. This can be dangerous whenever you have the frontal of Mordretha, but look at Mordretha's health. It's just plummeting under the effects of all of the cooldowns of Aster.Y.
Yeah, even though it's getting a couple bolstering stacks here, its health percentage is low enough that that's not much actual health. They are going to finish the boss now. Obey Alliance have 10 seconds to kill this boss and all of that trash. I don't think it's going to be enough time. 6 seconds left on the clock here. The boss still at 30% health. This was a close one, but it is going to be 1-0 to Aster.Y.
There we go. Aster.Y, of course, starting off very strong, and this is what we were really looking for, and these are the expectations that they had for themselves. And of course, as we saw from that video, they said, you know, we want to make sure that we're going to be third at least going into this tournament. And to do that with how stacked this roster is of different teams, organizations, and everything, Zyro, they have to be able to put up some wins early.
Yeah, and honestly, you know, minus the random spot deaths, this is kind of what I think we all have been expecting from this team, right? This is a team that just has ridiculous pace throughout dungeons. I've heard tales of some pretty ridiculous times. You know, one of them in particular is like an 11:45 hauls, which compared with the 11:58 or so we saw from Ambition earlier today, that sounds pretty scary if we do get to that in this series. But, you know, the deaths were a little bit uncanny, but the fact of the matter is they were so much faster throughout the course of the dungeon that it didn't really matter. They just still handily beat Obey Alliance, who were on a pretty solid run of their own.
That's right, and that's one of the things is you're looking at how some of these teams will start stacking up against each other and starting to compare some of those times to, of course, what we saw previously out of like Echo and Complexity, but still, I mean, it's an extremely good run there by Aster Drados, ready to prove themselves against the Western teams.
Yeah, as Tettles pointed out, you know, it is a slower time than Echo had in that dungeon, but that was a 0-death run from Echo. Yeah. Aster were within a minute of that with 3 deaths, including 2 which were quite costly, right, in that Zav wing. So when you factor those in, I think we are looking at top potential being equal or, in fact, faster potentially than what Echo have in there. But, of course, the big question is, what percentage of the time are their runs going to be perfect? That is the huge unknown variable about really, I mean, that's always the unknown variable
with every team.
MDI. That's the secret.
Yeah, and in particular, we're looking at, what were those costly deaths, and we saw a couple of the releases coming out as well, Zyro. So let's go over those a little bit more and see, is it just a consistency with the pull, or are they just making little mistakes here and there?
To be honest, it just seemed like it was little mistakes, and that's not to say the level of play was really that low either. Like, the level of play was high across the board for sure, right? This first boss kill just being 20 seconds faster than what we saw on the side of Obey Alliance just kind of set the tone of the dungeon. Yeah, they had some weird things like bone spears going off, but, who doesn't like seeing a Windwalker Monk go down to something silly every now and then? That was fine, and it wasn't honestly that bad of a timing, too. As the trash died, that's about as good as it gets. They did have to end up wasting a battle res, but when you're supposed to be a top-tier team, using a battle res on something like that shouldn't cost you in the long run, but it kind of did here. Onwo going down on that pull when they're trying to set up to do a double mini-boss pull is like one of the worst spots in the dungeon for a tank to go down, right? Ends up killing another player, but they're able to kite the pull out, they don't have to reset it and go again, and because of that, they're able to finish off the dungeon probably 30 to 45 seconds faster than what Obey Alliance would have gone on their run. And, when you're comparing it to Echo, like you said, Echo did have that 0-death run, which was 30 seconds faster, but I think if Aster was clean here, they could have very easily beaten that 17 flat minute time that Echo put up.
That's right, and they're one step closer to having that opportunity. But now, Tettles, let's set our sights on PLAGUEFALL, because not only is it going to be the next dungeon in our series, but it's one that we haven't even seen yet. So, curious to see what everybody's got in store on this one.
I mean, this is a Sanguine nightmare. So Sanguine for MDI style dungeons is always one of those things that it's very difficult to tell how much time teams lose to like the invisible Sanguine healing. But I think the first pull in this dungeon is going to be the one that's the most critical point for both of these teams. Just that first pull, whenever teams are doing that giant, whenever teams are doing all of those fungal mancers and dealing with the fungal storms, how much Sanguine healing are you ultimately going to get on that pack? Is it potentially going to wipe you on a 21, even though it's tyrannical? And what is your execution going to be looking like for the remainder of the dungeon, especially in that Dominant Venom Blade room?
That's right, and it is going to be a lot on that room in particular, and we see time and time again where Sanguine's sort of that less visible affix, that less in-your-face affix, as opposed to seeing the necrotic weight or the necrotic stacks build up on a tank or something, Dratnos, and just lead to a death. You're just seeing little heals that happen with something like Sanguine, which aren't going to wipe you, but they slowly start eating away at any sort of advantage you could build.
Yeah, let's not forget about Storming also. Storming has been dramatically nerfed since its Season 1 version, where it'll disappear after the first target that gets hit. But in PLAGUEFALL in particular, even one person getting hit by a storm can be deadly to the whole group. There are a lot of ground-targeted kill-you effects that you need to stand outside of in PLAGUEFALL, frontals or things that are exploding, and a storm hitting you can really interfere with that. So we'll see how well the teams are able to adapt to this incredibly intensive combination of affixes. It is the kind of thing where if they do it perfectly, it won't look like they've done anything at all. But if things go wrong, you'll really start to see it with the Storming and the Sanguine healing. Yeah.
I'm even thinking of like the tank getting hit up by Storming or something like that.
Yeah.
And if they're not like a Demon Hunter, then everything just pools up right beneath them and they're not going to be able to do anything about it and just sits there for another second or two. And sometimes that's all it takes because just the density, the amount of mobs that are all around there, Zyro. Think about like the big slime pool at the very beginning of the dungeon. You have 5 or 6 deaths already from those puddles all stacked on top of each other. It just makes it so everything full heals in an instant.
Well, something else I don't think we've been given enough attention is in that first dungeon, Xingqian was on a hunter, which is something that I don't think we've ever seen before. This guy is widely heralded as the best mage player in China, so I'd be surprised if we didn't see 2 mages here, and honestly, if there's ever a mage required in a dungeon, I'm gonna go with the team that has the best mage in his region on that character. Like, Xingqian on mage is a lot of damage.
Yeah, and we only saw 100 previously in the tournament, and it was when we saw Team Name running it as well. So still interesting to see Hunters having the representation in the MDI. But let's get into it as game number 2 is ready with Aster.Y up 1 versus Obey Alliance.
All right, and you do see look at this, Aster.Y, Qingshen on that Fire Mage, not even electing to play Frost. So Frost has been very popular this season just as a whole. So it's interesting to see. And Obey Alliance is running that Frost Mage, so just a little bit different of an adaptation between these two teams, even though they are running the exact same composition.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that puts Qingshen and I'm Fired Up as the two mages today that have chosen to play Fire while everybody else has been on Frost. And I think that's no mistake. Like, those are two expert mages. You could make an argument those are the two best mages in their respective regions. And Fire is an extremely intensive spec to min-max, right? So we are seeing a huge amount of difficulty here. But look at the damage Qingshen is putting out on this first pull. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it comes down to being able to spell steal that Fungalmancer buff. Ooh, everything is affected by that Wonder Grow right now. This is really scary for Aster.Y. Their health bars are dropping so low. They get a kick on Incinerator, but Incinerator's still alive, and that Fungalmancer is just Sanguine healing up to full. And it kind of makes you wonder, is that intentional, or is that something that is going to cause a problem in the future? But Obey Alliance is able to get their first pull dealt with a lot faster than Aster.Y.
That is indeed intentional. Yeah, that Fungalmancer is supposed to stay and continue being a battery for future stacks for Qingshen to spell steal. So if this strategy works out, it is really fast with the Fungalmancer being kept alive, and you can actually just keep healing it with Sanguine as well, is the great part. So you don't even need to like CC it outside of the pull like you might need to in a normal situation. But we've seen a lot of teams that attempt this sort of strategy end up falling victim to the extra difficulty of keeping the Fungalmancer managed in a dungeon that's already really mechanically intensive.
And look at this, Qingshen already has to start casting Polymorph on this Fungalmancer to heal it up, as the Fungalmancer is pretty low on HP. But here comes that Combustion, and that Holy Paladin is at the top of Aster.Y's damage meter. And look at this, these slimy morsels are getting super close to Gloggrog for Aster.Y, and Obey Alliance has moved Gloggrog off to the side, and they're dealing with their slimy morsels in their smorgasbord just by CCing them and not having to deal with them in the same way. Aster.Y kind of felt like they were a little bit hectic there, but once all of their pieces kind of came together, they're starting to pass Obey Alliance on the boss, and man, I think it just comes down to that Wonder Grow abuse and being able to deal with it with just that bonus DPS.
Look at the count as well. Aster.Y have found 6% more as a result of this pull pattern, and they're going to gain time on the boss split, or at least be equal here. This is a huge advantage for them. I think the Fungalmancer dying at the end there was intentional also. We saw a Ring of Peace that might have been to knock it into the Sanguine, but I think that was just to actually knock the Sanguine that it would drop away from being underneath the boss. That's allowing them to mount up and continue their path. So really efficient way to use that, as Obey Alliance are getting a huge pull going. Aster.Y bypassing that area entirely.
Yeah, so it looked like they were just waiting for that second combustion to be able to kill off that mob. So they only wanted Wonder Growth for that second combustion. They're like, I don't want to deal with this mob anymore. And now Aster.Y here, like you were saying, an absolutely massive pull. So many slimes here. I'm interested to see how they're going to be able to deal with Sanguine. Ooh, and it looks like one of those pestilent slimes there, just standing in the back, casting inside of that Sanguine. They are able to kite it out, but that's before the cheat, not before the cheat death is procced on the rogue from the side of Aster.Y. And Obey Alliance here, they're going a little bit different routing. They're going around the opposite direction from where we just saw that Aster.Y went.
Yeah, I mean, they are an oceanic team, right? An Australian team, and I do understand that everything sort of works in reverse there, right? Apparently, if you flush the toilet, it flushes the other way there, so maybe a sort of similar thing going on with their pathing.
Do they use bidets?
I'm not sure. That's something we'll have to ask them about later. They are going to keep pulling, though, as they have this huge pull coming onto the barrel here. Sanguine is going to be really vital to manage. Look as they start moving the mobs. And look at the way they've saved the Sigil of Silence for the end of this pull as well. That's going to mean mobs aren't going to stop and start casting in Sanguine, and that lets them just get a huge hit of count here without having any Sanguine healing whatsoever. Beautiful work there by Obey Alliance.
Yeah, a really good count injection for them. And so now they're just trying to claw back just a little bit of that enemy forces count that they lost from the first couple of pulls in the dungeon that they did slightly differently. And so now Aster.Y here on the left side of your screen, getting that Spinebreaker pulled. Obey Alliance is almost done with that pack. And hey, look at this. These Slime Claws, assuming that Ring of Peace goes off perfect, as it does, hey, they were able to even pull ahead in terms of how much count they have. Shroud has been called, and now they're just running towards that mini-boss, grabbing a Plague Boar in the process to pull it on top of White Weaver. I wonder if they're going to grab some of that trash that's off at the bottom, or maybe potentially even pull some of those tentacles. Because a lot of the times there will be teams that they use these Plague Boars and they use this addition, like that second set of Plague Boars, to get what is effectively just free DPS on some of these other trash pulls.
Yeah, you only get 4 sets of Plague Borers total now in Plaguefall, so there's no way to like abuse the continuing spawn of them, but you do get to take at least 1 set and potentially even more, and so both teams are doing exactly that. They are grabbing that next spawn of Plague Borers, and they are taking it on an adventure with them to deal a huge amount of free damage to this purple slime in this next pull.
So something I actually didn't notice until now, do you see that Obey Alliance's mage is playing Necrolord?
Oh, I hadn't noticed that either. Okay, so the Necrolord
I wonder
effect,
why.
the Necrolord effect for Frost Mage is not particularly synergistic with the spec. It gives you a bit of extra spell power, which is nice when it's active, but the main effect it has, it's mostly good for Arcane. It either makes your Frostbolt or your Arcane Blast or your Fireball empowered and hit an extra 2 targets as well. Really good for Arcane, because Arcane Blast is a huge amount of their damage. For Frost, it's not a very common choice. So I am curious, maybe the idea there is there's just some of the slime Fleshcraft absorbs that he does that 40 is not going to be doing.
Maybe it's like an issue of like Fleshcraft cooldown timing. Like that's the only thing that would really make sense to me, is like if you needed to Fleshcraft like 2 slimes back to back and you otherwise would not be able to get the Fleshcraft on that, and you're valuing that super high.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be the defensive side of things, right? You don't need a Fleshcraft shield if you're already playing a Frost Mage, right? You've got 2 ice blocks, infinite ice barriers, all those sorts of effects. So I think that does have to be probably it. I mean, it's not a huge deal for mages
Skylark
either
can
way.
play it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to ask them another time. But Obey Alliance pulling ahead on Dr. Ickis, 30% HP. We saw Aster.Y on the left side, just letting that bomb go off. Both of these teams, it's very common to let the first bomb go off. You pop a bunch of defensives or immunities and live. And now these teams are, you see on the right side, Obey Alliance has that congealed slime blinded, and they're just going to be focusing down Dr. Ickis with as much DPS as they possibly can before that second bomb goes off. And barring any deaths, they should absolutely have this. Ooh, and look at this. Ooh. Now we're ooh, did he just Fleshcraft that?
Well, Anuo, actually, on the side of Aster.Y, is also playing Necrolord. So that is the source of the Necrolord effect for Aster.Y. Yeah, and did end up going and grabbing some Fleshcraft value from these slimes here, I think, later on in this pull. So yeah, maybe it's the double Necrolord tech to get 2 full buff durations worth out of single mobs by having somebody get them near the start of the pull and somebody getting them right at the end before you leave.
Not bad. All right, so now Obey Alliance and Aster.Y at identical enemy count thresholds, and hey, Obey Alliance is starting to pull a bit ahead here, being able to get that second boss dead somewhere in the range of like 15 seconds ahead, and now they're able to deal with that island trash pull, not getting too much sanguine healing here.
No.
And this is going to be one of the most pivotal points in the dungeon for Obey Alliance, while Aster.Y on the left side of your screen having a little bit of sanguine healing.
Yeah, Aster.Y spending a little bit too long here on their island expedition, something I did a lot last expansion, but they've finished it off and are going into the next pull.
And look at Obey Alliance. The Obey Alliance tags Dominant Venomblade and is pulling it right on top of the remainder of this trash. So they're doing a really good job here, but they need to make sure that no sanguine healing happens. And all of their members were rooted up by that ambusher, but they're able to drag Dominant Venomblade away from all that sanguine healing, and now they just have one more trash pull to be able to deal with in this room. They have the sniper and his ambushers off to the side that they're going to be able to deal with, but they have to be very careful.
And that's actually intentional. The webbing cast, standing in that and letting it free cast, is better than having it go interrupted, because then it will do its next ambush sooner, and that's the dangerous part of those mobs. So you can see great management there of those mechanics. Obey Alliance are still a little bit ahead on the boss, but it looks like Aster.Y have hit the gas here. Might be that Fire Mage diff as well. You can see Chingshin just dealing absurd DPS right now. They have the boss almost caught up here to where Obey Alliance are at. Wow, this is going to be right down to the wire in this game. Both teams really have world-class runs going on right now.
Hey, and it may come down to the Sanguine healing in this last room with those Devout ads. So with the Devout ads, we've seen Sanguine catastrophes happen whenever you end up healing that mini-boss to full, and then you have to wait for Sanguine to expire. So notably, that mini-boss teleports on 33 and 66% intervals, but if you teleport it at the wrong time, or you're maybe potentially even too aggressive with your strategies inside of the dungeon, you can have an absolutely massive problem. But Aster.Y and Obey Alliance, like you were talking about, at the exact same point in this dungeon in terms of boss HP, and now Obey Alliance here, looking like they're pulling Dominant Venom Blade on top of some of this this tentacle off to the side.
Yeah, this tentacle is a good source of some extra count. We do see teams opting to go over there from time to time. Aster.Y, though, having none of it. They have 82% already, so I think they are good to head downstairs. We'll see exactly what combination of slimes and such they might need, though, as they all are almost finish off with the boss. They are actually going to kill the boss 1 second faster than Obey Alliance. But yeah, I mean, they are 1% behind, and so you can see they do need to go around, and they are going to actually grab all 3 of these little slimes off to the side.
So, interestingly enough, that yellow slime that gives AoE damage, the AoE damage doesn't scale with dungeon level. So that one, while you may think it's like a really good value, not great value in terms of like getting it just for your AoE damage. You would much rather have that Pestilent Slime, which gives you the haste, and then that, I think it's Corrosive Slime that gives you the damage reduction. Those 2 are the big ones, just for flesh crafting value as a whole.
Yeah, that is huge value. I mean, the great point, like that, with the haste scaling effectively as players do, whereas the yellow one does not. Aster.Y getting started here into this trash pull. They have to be careful with Sanguine healing, though. Great taunt, but unfortunately,
the healer
we
dies.
have death. So I think there was a good taunt there to move the mob away so the Sanguine wouldn't heal the rest of the pack. But unfortunately, healer going down here for Aster.Y. They do have the battle res deployed. Okay.
Hey, Obey Alliance here with a little bit different of a strategy. How they were pulling their trash on top of Domina, how they were pulling that tentacle and that shield mob, and it's just looking really good for them. Now they are firmly in the driver's seat here. They do have all of their offensive CDs up in just a few seconds. They have that Bloodlust. They do have that Ashen Hollow in 10 seconds. They're electing to save some of that stuff, just committing the Icy Veins here at the very beginning. Icy Veins is a cooldown that's normally almost always up. And so they are committing just a very lax amount of CDs here to Margrave Stradamus, able to push that boss almost before the first rain even ends. And so now here, you're going to watch Obey Alliance as they try to avoid tagging these Devout ads. Oh, except for the Mage, who has the Blink, because if you tag these Devout ads, then you get affected by the slow and that healing reduction and all of these negative tormented effects if you are in combat with them. But if you do get them killed off, then those tormented effects go away. So really good call by Obey Alliance to be able to get those killed off quickly, or just not get in combat with them.
Yeah, Obey Alliance firmly in the driver's seat now. They're already into phase 2 of the boss here. They also have 5 extra seconds in their favor because of the death on Aster.Y's side earlier. Aster.Y still having to deal with this last set of tentacles as well before they get into their second phase, while Obey Alliance just keep on pumping here. It is going to take Herculean amounts of damage from Aster.Y if they want to close this gap, but they are going to make their best attempt at it. It's going to be the Bloodlust, the Ashen Hallow, the Combustion. A huge difference between the 2 teams is that Combustion. So maybe they can close this thing. You can see they're doing a huge amount of damage to the Margrave, but Obey Alliance already in their last intermission have such a big time advantage already. And
they have to overcome a 5 seconds of death differential, which...
Right.
I mean, that is actually a big task to be able to overcome. And so now Aster.Y here in their second intermission. Obey Alliance coming straight out of their second intermission. Margrave Stradamus, 33%. Ashen Hollow has been dropped. All of the boss's HP is just dipping super low. All defensives are being popped here just to try to keep the whole entire party alive. Nothing is going to be left up to chance here as Obey Alliance firmly in the driver's seat. They need to make sure that they're continuing to dodge out of the way of these tentacles. Otherwise, a minor catastrophe could occur. And hey, it's looking like Obey Alliance is going to be able to down Margrave Stradamus here in just a second.
Yeah, no way they could wipe from here, as they do actually get the boss killed. That is going to be Obey Alliance tying up the series 1-1 against Aster.Y.
That's right. Very, very close difference between those two times. But we are going to be going on to a game number 3 as Obey Alliance takes that victory there in PLAGUEFALL, Zyro.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it all came down to that death right at the end there. If they didn't have that death go off, they might have just barely had the DPS to pull it out. It was going to be really close if they didn't have to worry about those 5 extra seconds. Yeah, it would have been within 5 seconds easily. So, man, that was a really, really close one between Aster.Y and Obey Alliance, but I think this is a great example of the kind of level that this Aster.Y team can play to, right? Like, if they're being competitive and taking games off of Obey Alliance, who's one of our better teams in the Western region, I mean, I feel like this team has a very, very high upper limit.
It does. And, you know, we've been kind of saying that in particular about Obey Alliance for a while now, is that, you know, when we saw them when they had a couple previous players on their team, that they were able to have their highs just as high as anybody else, but trying to get the consistency there was always a challenge. And now, once again, you know, they've got new players on the team, but they're not skipping a beat. And when they are on fire, they are just on point with the best of them. And let's start going over how close really this PLAGUEFALL was, Zyro, because it just came right down to, you know, death difference plus a couple seconds.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're looking at in this dungeon comes down to, honestly, the mage play. I mean, the damage meters on this
mage
first
play, you're
boss,
saying it's about mage play.
when it came out to the Fungalmancer's spell steal stacking into the Combust, actually gave a huge single target DPS increase advantage to Aster.Y on this first boss. Then they had a great setup coming into the second boss, using the Sigil of Misery to make sure they get the Plague Borer explosives on top of a couple of trash mobs so they can get that haste buff up for the boss right away. But after this, it kind of just started going south for Aster.Y, and Obey Alliance was able to catch up using that Necrolord Frostmage tech. Mage picking up the buff as the boss dies, so that for the next minute they'll have that haste buff going into the third boss for that massive pull, and that really secured the advantage for Obey Alliance. And I didn't see Aster.Y going for that. It looked like both their Monk and their Vengeance Demon Hunter, they were playing 2 Necrolords, just picked up the buff at the same time. They didn't really spread them out so much. So I think it was just better routing from Obey Alliance that won them this map.
So you can it's a personal buff on the person who crafts, so you can basically get double the buff if you have 2 Necrolords inside of the dungeon. It makes me wonder, like, why in the world was Obey Alliance playing Necrolord Frost as opposed to Necrolord Vengeance? I feel like if they were looking to utilize the Fleshcraft like they were, I feel like it would have maybe just been better placed on that Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I guess that's why these are the professionals, right?
Well, I feel like Zyro pointed it out, though, was we just got that highlight of the mage running over, picking up the buff, and then chaining that momentum into it, and it seemed like it was easier for a DPS to do that than the tank.
Also, specifically, Covenants and Soulbinds for Frost Mages, especially when you factor in AoE, there's like very, very minimal downside to swapping to a lesser Covenant. So Necrolord isn't really necessarily that bad, and the benefits from gaining 3 minutes of extra haste buff uptime over the course of the dungeon due to being able to go back with alter time usage versus instead having your tank, you know, leap the wrong direction would be a lot better. I don't know. I think it's pretty close. I think Frostmage doesn't really lose that much playing Necro.
Because Fire Mage would, right? Aster.Y certainly can't
would.
make that decision, but Obey Alliance does have the Frost Mage that's kind of more free to do something like that. Like you said, it is really minimal difference between the Covenants and them plus.
Interesting, and we'll have to see what they're going to have cooked up, of course, for our final series, not only of this series, but of the day. And when it comes to innovation, Halls of Atonement is definitely one of those dungeons titles that we're expecting a lot from.
Is there going to be a triple shard pull?
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so.
That pull is one of those pulls that if you told me that it was doable at the beginning of the expansion, I would have looked at you like you had 3 heads. That pull, just watching teams
3 shards?
Be able to... Yeah, 3 shards. If you're able to pull it off, it can save you just an insurmountable amount of time. I'm also interested to see, are we going to see Destro locks again? Because we saw it whenever Ambition played Perplexed earlier. Both teams were running that Destro lock. We're utilizing it to be able to do 300,000 DPS on some pulls. It was very good. And also kind of like what's going to round out the composition. Is it going to be that Rogue? Is it going to be that Shadow Priest? Like where is the composition going to get rounded out? I think there are a lot of different routing and compositional choices that make Halls of Atonement very unique in that regard, where nothing is super cookie cutter or set in stone, even though it kind of feels similar whenever you're watching the teams play the dungeon.
Yeah,
I'm
right
curious, who's going to play the Warlock for Aster.Y?
Yeah. Looking at that, I mean, that was one thing that we saw as sort of a big advantage in group stages was the teams who already had people who could play Warlock, but now that we've had a lot of time for everybody to prepare, we've seen at least 2 teams so far who have quickly adopted and made sure they're ready to play Warlock when the time comes. So that is a very good question, as we did see the Hunter coming out instead of the Mage, if I remember right, Zyro. So maybe that would be it, but wouldn't you still already want a Mage anyway?
Well, yeah, Xingqian's for sure going to play Mage, and I know that both Yellow and ZyBB, if you were watching the cinematic that we saw about Aster.Y earlier, they both play Shadow Priest, so I guess it becomes a question of whether or not Yellow or Zai is going to be playing the Warlock. If they even run the Warlock at all.
I think you'd probably have ZyBB on the Warlock, and then you'd have Yellow on the Rogue. You probably just would elect to not run the Shadow Priest. I think that the Rogue... I think the Rogue does bring a lot of value, just in terms of the single target damage that it brings, especially on the back half of the key. Like just from like Halkias onward, I feel like the amount of single target damage that the Rogue brings is a lot. Shadow Priest is also very good for very similar stuff, but it's about comfort, right? And Yellow is a very well-known Rogue player, so it would shock me if they were running the Shadow Priest and then had Yellow on that Warlock. I think that they're probably well versed and they've practiced a lot of different setups. So it's going to be interesting to see which one they have deemed to be their best, because what is technically the best may not always be what lines up with what is their potential best in terms of like compositions that they're going to be running.
That makes sense. I would even argue that Rogue's particularly important for that 3rd shard that gets pulled in late, because it just takes such a long time for it to be able to get there to begin with. But even if they're not doing a 3rd shard pull, they're still having to pull that 3rd one by itself, and then having, of course, tons of small mobs that are going to get AoE down quickly. So even more importance for that funnel damage to be coming alongside. So we'll see what these guys have in store, as the series is currently tied 1-1 between Aster.Y and Obey Alliance. And of course, this will be our final series of the day, where the winner moves on into the upper bracket for tomorrow. Loser gets dropped to the lower and has to fight for their survival. So let's see what these teams have in store as game number 3 gets rolling here in Halls of Atonement.
Warlocks deployed for both teams. No Shadow Priests in sight as well. Aster.Y going to be heading left. Obey Alliance going to be heading right, and both teams are starting a huge pull here. Oh my goodness, look at this, Zyro.
I don't know where Zyro is, but he's probably gone. All right, so Obey Alliance is starting off on this right side, like you pointed out. They pull Incinerator Arcleth into this single shard pull, and they're burning their massive 3-minute cooldowns on this, and they're burning their Infernal and all of their CDs here. And as opposed to Aster.Y, which immediately go left, they burn their Bloodlust and all of their offensive CDs on something that is a double shard pull. And so, but Aster.Y, ZyBB already has his Infernal backup, so it's going to be up for 2 pulls in a row. It's just the power of that Bloodlust hitting 40 on the side of Obey Alliance also already has his Infernal backup. So maybe no harm, no foul with burning your Infernal on that first pull. Maybe it's just a difference of preference here.
Yeah, the way the Warlock works in these dungeons, they play the legendary, the Wilfred Sigil of Summoning, that lets you reduce the cooldown of your Infernal for each soul shard you spend. So if you're not pressing that thing when it's off cooldown, that legendary is really burning a hole in your pocket. So both teams really making sure that they have these pulls where they can press their Infernal.
So typically Halls of Atonement is a dungeon where you have to do like one not great pull. And it just kind of depends on your routing, and it's due to the fact that the shards like have that anima bar at the bottom of your screen, and you have to wait for that anima bar to reach 100%. And so a lot of these teams, whenever like a very standard route is doing what Aster.Y is doing on the left side of your screen, where they do double shard, then they do a single shard, and then they do the Incinerator with the Groundskeepers, which is their quote bad pull. It's just slower than a normal pull, but they're waiting for Halkias' anima to be able to charge up. On the side of Obey Alliance, they're doing 1 shard at a time right now, which makes me wonder if they're going to have just +1 on their pull counter over where Aster.Y has. Or if they're going to potentially be able to do something that is super unique, or like some new tech with activating Halkias early. because there have been some things where some teams are able to activate the boss just a little bit early or potentially get some count elsewhere, and I wonder if that's something that Obey Alliance has discovered how to pull off.
Yeah, I don't think you can activate the boss early, but you can certainly get in position and make your next pull after this one, the boss, if the shard dies relatively early in this pull, and you're cleaning up the other mobs for the remainder of the pull. If that happens for Obey Alliance, then yeah, both teams are going to be on that sort of 2.5 pull, 3 pull count before they get into the boss. Otherwise, like you said, Aster.Y will certainly have the advantage here. As they are now roughly even on count, you can see the two teams, even though they really attacked this dungeon differently, have gotten to a very similar spot. Aster.Y are now going to be pulling trash into boss for sure, right?
Yeah, and look at Obey Alliance. They're still at 75% on Halkias' Anima, so they're still like cleaning up this little bit of a trash. They're waiting for their Anima to be able to charge on the boss, while Aster.Y here already in position to engage the boss. So I think that right there, that additional pull for Obey Alliance is going to set them back, and I wonder how they're going to be able to utilize this 10% enemy force count difference to their advantage. And it may be something as simple as like a triple Stoneborn into Halkias. You see Lagbug here getting in position, pulling that Stoneborn over the wall. There may be something like that on this 22 fortified where they've deemed multiple 2 to 3 Stoneborns is something that they're super interested in to be able to save them a lot of time.
And Sack, Meta, Fell Devastation, Fiery Brand, and Last Resort are all unavailable here for Arnamos, so this is going to be a dangerous time on the side of Aster.Y. You can see how scared he's playing without any of those cooldowns up, backing very far away, not taking any auto attacks from basically anything at this point. Really heads up management of resources there. Demon Hunters are incredibly squishy without any of those things available, and so great job there by Aster.Y of mitigating that by kiting as well as they've done there. So they're going to keep that pull alive. Meanwhile, Obey Alliance also into the boss here. Huge amounts of trash, huge amounts of damn coming out from their Warlock.
Yeah, so Obey Alliance there, they took a really long time to be able to set their pull up onto Halkias with how much CC they were having to deploy on all of that trash, getting those double Stoneborns dealt with. But now here, look at this. They still have a couple of trash mobs to deal with. Aster.Y has finished off Halkias. All they have are these Spitefuls that are going to die on their own. And Aster.Y here taking a little bit of a lead, slightly behind count-wise, but it's not slightly behind enough to where you would be super happy if you're Obey Alliance. They are effectively they have the exact same pulls left in the remainder of this dungeon to do between these two teams.
Yeah, this 1% is not going to change anything about the remaining pathing through the dungeon.
No,
Obey Alliance, this is a tragedy there. That Warlock Gateway was supposed to go up to the top of the terrain there, but it did not work, and that's going to cost Obey Alliance an extra 15-20 seconds there. Yeah, tremendously unfortunate turn of events, yeah.
All right, so now Obey Alliance does have Echelon engaged on the left side. Aster.Y already a 30% lead onto Echelon here. Obey Alliance is definitely within striking distance if their damage on this boss is going to be able to be better just in terms of how many CDs they've allocated for the boss. But it looks like Aster.Y and Obey Alliance have very similar cooldowns. So it's just going to come down to who can pump harder. And if Aster.Y is going to make any mistakes, this could be a position where Obey Alliance can capitalize on them.
Yeah, that is going to be the sort of the story of the game from here. Actually, you know what? I think the numbers might be close enough here that Obey Alliance might still be able to close this just with good damn. Like, look at this. Echelon's already 15% difference between the two bosses. Now, damage is going to slow here for Obey Alliance in a sec, but still, I think this is going to be close enough that good execution can keep this to anybody's game. Certainly, if there are any deaths on the side of Aster.Y, that will be all it takes for Obey Alliance to get right back into this.
So I think Aster.Y actually intentionally left up a couple of those gargoyles to allow their rogue just a little bit more boss damage onto Echelon. It's something that I would not advise doing in your normal run. However,
and the Warlock.
whenever you have teams like this, yeah, like Warlock and Mage, it's all of your whole entire party is a lot happier if you have more ads available for them to be able to cleave off of and just get a lot of single target resources from that AoE damage.
Yeah, Aster.Y going to be skipping that next Tormentor. They'll be taking the extra aura on the last boss, not interested in spending any more time than they need to. They are going to be going straight into the third boss here with a Stoneborn on top as well. That one's going to get mind controlled in just a second here as they finish killing off all of this huge trash pool here.
All right, and so this pull is probably one of the last very difficult parts of their dungeon. So they do have the Infernal stun coming out on all of this trash. You need to watch Anuo's health. He does not have Last Resort available. His meta is active currently, so he's in a pretty decent position, but this pull is still very dangerous for him. They need to make sure that they're getting kicks on the Obliterators. Nobody dies to Deadly Thrust. That Darkblade has claimed the lives of many healers. But Aster.Y looks like they're doing a great job of kiting out this pack. Sack comes out onto Anuo as he's starting to drop pretty low. His meta's going to fall here in just a second, and that's going to be very dangerous for Aster.Y, but it looks like the trash is going to be killed off right as his meta falls. And so this is a great job from Aster.Y to be able to pull off and have great execution on this trash pack.
Yeah, a few Spiteful Shades still up there, but for the most part, well managed by Aster.Y, and they just have the boss, and it looks like one Collector still being left alive. That Collector is free-casting its Channel Sins, and they are allowing it to do so, and this is going to be their funnel factory, where they're going to be creating this nice set of extra adds, bunch of extra combo points, as the rogues like to call them, to deal even more damage to the boss with those extra combo points.
A trade offer has been called. I let you cast Collect Sins, I collect AoE to single target damage.
Yep, that is the plan here for Aster.Y, and look at how quickly they're making this boss disappear, almost dead already, and I think they are going to actually gain time here on this boss 3 split. Actually, you know what? Obey Alliance are not slowing down either. This one might be really, really, really close, Tunnels.
Obey Alliance, for how interesting they pulled the courtyard area, I feel like they've just been playing on the back foot the whole entire time, but they've been clawing back just in terms of, damn. They look at this. Elise, 13% HP. Whenever Echelon got pulled, there was a 30% health disparity between these two teams. And now Aster.Y is on a Cigar. They're going to drop all of their CDs onto this. They're also going to teleport the Stoneborn right on top of Inquisitor Cigar. That's a very common strategy from these MDI teams to be able to get this mini-boss one-phased on a 22 fortified, which is not something you see very commonly done. However, both Obey Alliance and Aster.Y being able to deploy that strategy, and now Obey Alliance are onto Inquisitor Cigar as well. If Aster.Y has a hiccup here, and that cast goes off and ends up healing Cigar, that could be a problem. However, Aster.Y, right as the Dark Community is happening, it's fine. Don't even worry about it too much. Gets that mob killed off, and they are in a great spot.
Yeah, they have a 30-second lead here as they're getting started on the last boss. 30 seconds going to be so difficult for the other team, to Obey Alliance, to be able to overtake here, as Aster.Y getting started just with the boss. Now, their damage is going to be slow for a while here. Qingxian gets pod. Is that
That's pod.
podded?
That's pod.
Yeah.
That's pod.
Ooh, okay, all right. It's not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. Luckily, not in Icy Veins either, so it's not going to cost him Icy Veins reset time as well. There is actually a lot of damage going out on this fight as well. Anuo is back to Last Resort, at least, and has meta available, so shouldn't be too much danger. Actually, that, you know what? I think that is Last Resort that may have been used there. So yeah, a lot of danger here for Aster.Y. The boss's health is dropping rather slowly as well. Bop is going to be committed here to allow their rogue to stay right under the boss during the statue pull-in here. Obey Alliance, though, are hitting the gas. They are 10% away on the boss's health. No Bloodlust yet for Obey Alliance, but it has already just been pressed here for Aster.Y.
So, interestingly enough, Aster.Y commits that Bloodlust whenever the Infernal is not yet up. And the reason that they're doing that is because they want the Telekinesis statues to happen as fast as possible. Plus, they feel like they potentially aren't going to be able to get full value out of this. This is an interesting decision that we saw earlier in the Perplex versus Ambition series, where when are you committing that Bloodlust? Are you committing it on your Warlock CDs? Are you committing it on that Infernal? Or are you committing it a little bit early to be able to get that Telekinetic Onslaught dealt with? And so, right as the Infernal comes up, the Bloodlust fades for Aster.Y,
This is going to be
and that's not
so
great.
close. Aster doesn't have Ashen Hallow, and they're not going to, but Lagbug on the side of Obey Alliance presses it, along with Bloodlust, along with Wings, along with the Infernal in a couple seconds here. Obey Alliance are going to deal so much damage here with all these cooldowns, but I don't think it's going to be enough, as the boss is already so low here for Aster.Y, 5%. Obey Alliance are going to be doing like twice as much damage, but they have way more than twice as much health to chew through. Aster.Y are going to take this one. Wow, this was close.
Oh my my goodness. Aster.Y taking the victory again by just a few seconds there as Obey Alliance just finishing up the last bit of Lord Chamberlain, but it's not enough as Aster.Y is going to be moving on through the upper bracket here, sending Obey Alliance into the lower and putting up some incredibly impressive performances throughout this one, Zyro.
And you have to wonder if the Troll Gate